Okay, so this is going to be my basic Inferno positions guide and spots guide. So I'm just going to go over all the basic T side spots and CT side spots that you'd expect to see on a default, and should hopefully give you a good idea of if you jump into a pug or you want to get into Team CS, what kind of roles are involved, and the basics of what you might need to take on map control and how you can play with your teammates around you. So let's get into it. So the first player is your dedicated awps player. So he's most likely going to be running up this way toward apps every round, and in his own time, depending on how he thinks is best to play it, he's going to be just taking the apps fights and clearing out apps, clearing out these angles like this. His main job is to get the apartments control, make sure it's clear. So he's going to get up to maybe here, he's going to clear this map out of the map, and he's going to call to the RGL that apps is clear and he's got apps control. Then his most likely next thing is to start coming back, and then you're going to start to maybe either take brackets, or if he calls the other B players back to take brackets, he's going to be sitting here looking to get picks. This apps player a lot of the time is looking, you've got to be always looking to get entry picks onto the A site. So a great example I'll give is, let's say your team are taking brackets. You want to try and get across to, this part of apps without anyone seeing you, and when you're doing this, the AWP might be rotating back, so you might be able to catch an AWP out here, maybe even catch the short guy coming back. Same thing if you can catch a pit by a player out of position, then that's great. Your job as the apps player is also kind of a semi-entry onto the A site, so that's what you should be doing. Okay, then we're going on to the other A side default player that you might expect. This is going to be the boiler player. So the boiler player is commonly going to be on the bridge to start the round, so he might be spamming up. He might be spamming the windows, making sure there's no one jumping across before running up. Then when he's running up, he's going to peek the corners here like such, make sure there's no one early and mid before going to a boiler. Then he's going to work with his apps player to clear out apps, make sure there's no one boiler. And at this point of the round, if he's got boiler control, the boiler player's default is done. He's got the boiler control, so he now calls CRGL, I've got apps, I've got boiler control. Then he might want to start seeing if he can take timings toward brackets or get flashed over to peak short. When his default's done, he might want to come back to do a brackets util set from here or from boiler and help his team take brackets control if that's what the RGL called. If not, a great thing you want your apps player to do is come back up toward the balcony and do the silent drop. I'm not sure how to do it, but to do the silent drop, when you drop down, you make no noise, and then you can listen to RGL call. So your apps player, your dedicated boiler player, isn't normally the A entry fragger. He's kind of like a half entry fragger with the apps guy, but is normally like second in with the mid players if they come in mid. So the two best players on HLTV currently for these two spots are the A apps player being Flint and the A boiler player being Alish. So then of course you've got your mid player. So the mid player is normally your awper. So this is your awper's role on the map. He's just going to be defaultly looking toward the middle, making sure there's no one crossing, taking these kind of angles or making sure no one's late peeking. But a main job of the AWper on this map is to help the banana players to stay with the pack. So he might be window flashing, he might be coming up and double half full flashing for your team, but supporting the B players in any way he can. Same thing if there's no one in mid, he might be flashing for a short guy to peek, he might be just flashing mid. Just trying to get our mid utility and see if they make, if the CTs over peak in any way. So you'll commonly see on T-side Inferno as well, a lot of AWpers opt toward the rifle. So Simple, Zyru, Device, the three best AWpers on this map, like pretty much in history, are all guys that that like to rifle on the T side. This is because if it's quite a small map with not a lot of long angles, and if the CT is using their utility well at the beginning of the round, it doesn't offer a lot of like early round picks. So you might see your AWper using a rifle. So the best player in the world on Inferno T side in the AWP role is of course Simple currently at the moment. So then we're going to come to the first banana player. So this player is actually called the Roma. So their position as the Roma means that they're just normally with the pack. So if I give you an example of this, you've got your normal B player, who we'll get to in a minute. Then you've got your Roma and your AWper. So you see on this A side, the B side of the map, we've got a 3 lean, and on the A side it's only 2. So your Roma is with the pack, so that's correct. That's in the position they might be. So if you wanted to do more of an A heavy lean, then your Roma would be the one that goes over toward A, and then you can leave your banana player in B, and your AWper obviously still plays in the same spot. So the main job of the Roma is to stay with the pack and support more the players in the more aggressive and advanced position. So the Roma and Banana, he's going to be one that wants to support your banana player the best he can and set him up for kills, and make sure to be trading him as well if he goes down. So you might be half full flashing for your banana player. You might be doing a corner molly so they can't come back in after after this guy's got card control, so he can't come back in. The Roma player might also be going toward A this round. So he might be coming toward middle, So you don't want to go to a boiler or apartments because that job's already covered. So the Roma might be coming toward middle, maybe coming up so he can peek double with this boiler guy, or getting a flash in from the awper back there. But overall, the Roma's job is kind of the support player of the team, and you can have a lot of impact as a Roma if you're playing your role right and setting up your team correctly and doing the right things at the right time. So if you notice a really heavy CT on Banana, then as the Roma, you can make the suggestion that, hey, I think I'm going to have better impact toward A, so you might go toward A and start helping your two apps players and seeing what you can set them up for. She might be maybe throwing flashes like this over the balcony to maybe get your apps guy for a peek. You might be helping your boiler player come out short, maybe double peek with him. She might peek first and let him try and trade off you. The job of the Roma is just to really go with the pack and win out rounds with the team and set up your team as best you can. Someone that plays the Roma position really well on the T side is on Inferno is Kicker. Kicker, also Tessus, and Rain also so occasionally plays this role on the T side of Inferno. Now we come to a dedicated Banana player. So your Banana player is the guy that is being really aggressive in the early rounds. You know, he's coming up, smoking the mollies, doing the flash out bell, trying to take as many fights in the Banana as you can, peeking the wall, you know, getting support from the Roma and the awper to try and take car control as quick as possible. He's also the guy that you're going to leave Banana if you go back to take A. And if you come back to take B, he should have used all his util to take the fights on Banana, so he's probably going to be the one entry fragging now on B. So the role of the Banana player in general is just to get Banana control, get car control, and try and talk as much to the IGL about what you hear and what util they've used on B. So if you're on car, you should note at the beginning of the round, let's say they've used 2 mollies and 2 nades. When you're coming to B, you as the Banana player, you might have another flash over, see if you can, you know, don't peek CT, but you might be able to jiggle out some shots, see if you can get the CTs use smokes, because if they then use 2 smokes, you should be shout back to IGL, they've got no util left on B, they've used 2 smokes, 2 mollies, 2 nades, and then your IGL, wherever he is going to have massive information now that you might be able to hit the B site late and you can get ready to enter. These are going to be guys, you'll want your Banana guy to be one of the best riflers on the team, because he's going to be one that's taking the initial fights and is going to have loads of really important gunfights. Similarly, you're going to want your 2 best riflers on the team to be playing the Banana role and the boiler role. So this is because these guys are going to be the guys that are most likely taking fights early on in the round, and also the guys that are taking the most aim heavy fights. Because the guy in Banana it's not exactly a come up, pre-aim, go slowly, take your time spot. This is a spot where you're going to get mollied out, you're going to get flashed out, so you're going to have to be quick with your reactions to kill these kind of guys. So you want one of your best aimers on Banana, and same thing with Boiler, you want your best guy on Boiler, because this guy is going to be the guy that gets flashed out, he's going to have to come out, you know, swing, take these fights really quickly. So your 2 best riflers on the map should be playing Boiler and Top Banana, and then your other 2 riflers you want playing as the Roma, and the other guys the A-apps. Okay, so that's the basic T-side roles on Inferno that you might expect on a default. Now let's get into the CT side role. Okay, so the CT side of Inferno, let's get into it. So the first position we've got on CT side Inferno is the pit player. So the pit player's job is to basically anchor the A site. So he's the guy that you want to stay alive the longest on the A site. He wants to be wasting as much time as possible when they're doing an AXQ, you know, playing these kind of angles, saving your utility to as late as possible so you can throw the magic smoke so you don't get mollied out, play around, delay as much time as you can as a pit. Your job as that pit player isn't necessarily to get flashy highlights, it isn't to, you know, you're not going to get 3Ks every round, you're not going to get 4Ks every round. Your job is to make sure when they do come in A, maybe your AWPers died early, maybe your short guys died early, that's when you make your plays. You get a 3K anchoring the site, you know, you just want to play like as ratty as possible around the smokes in spots and delay the Ts as much from pushing up, so when the Bs rotate, that's your best job. So you can play this from a numerous positions. So you can play it on the balcony, you know, you can play just inside the apps position here, and don't get aggressive apps too much, because obviously if you think now, the opposite role that you're playing is you're playing against the A-apps guy. So if you're consistently losing this fight against the A-apps guy, maybe he's getting the timings on you, maybe he knows you're being aggressive, then you're going to lose more rounds than not, and you don't want to die early. As the A-pit player, if you're dying at the beginning of the round, then you're doing something wrong. So you'll see Axel play a lot of these anchor positions on maps because he's just one of the best mechanically riflers in the world, but also he's super disciplined, so that's something you've got to be as a pit player. So again, with the A-pit player, you also want to be last to rotate toward the B site, but you can also be calling for your mid player and your AWper to retake certain spots. So as the pit player on A, you've got the most vision of what's happening on the A site. So you can see on the radar, even my radar, not fully zoomed out, you can see the whole of the A site. So if you know that you haven't got brackets control and the B guys, you know they're under a bit of pressure, then you might want to retake brackets. So good you two, you know, the flash for short. You flash your team back in, and you should be calling this because you're on the back line. Okay, so that's the A pit player. So obviously great examples of this if you want to watch people through it. Electronic, Magisk, as I mentioned, Axel. These guys in pit are the best pit players in the world, so you might want to watch and pick up some of the things they do. So now on to the A short player. So the A short player's job obviously is to protect the short position as shown in here, and stop the T's running out mid. Your A short player has got to be really good at working well with the awper, who's normally commonly on long, and working with the pit player because you're in between both positions to know what positions he's best taking. So if your awper has only got the tight mid angle, then you've got to be super worried that a guy could pop out of boiler any time. So you might be want to playing on this angle here, just looking through the little crack and holding for boiler, like so. Also, you want to be using your utility early in the round toward bedroom and apartments and second mid. You might want to nade down middle. When there's a smoke down, you might want to throw a nade down middle. You can nade into these positions here using your utility early. Again, with apartments, you don't want to be super aggressive apps all the time. Maybe one or two rounds in the half would be good to do it. And if you are doing it, make sure your apps guy's doing it as well, and your AWP can cover. So you're all in sync with the A side. So also as your short player, you can also play different setups. So you might, as a short player again, you might want to call stacks toward your position. So let's say you know that they've been quite aggressive short and they're catching you out. That might not necessarily be your fault, you just need more manpower here. So you might call for your AWP to come over and you might be playing in a different kind of stack here. You also might be playing on a stack on long. So maybe the rifle, you might be sit here, and while you stick the AWP on the corner like so, you might also call for your, if your pit guy's in pit, let's say playing aggressive on short for your up on short hasn't worked, you might be the guy that's tucked into cold here on site, maybe lower, and working with your pit player to playing good crossfire. So when they do come up short, you're in the best position possible. So when the T's come in, you can, you know, you're in a good crossfire with your pit player. So who do you want to work the most with? So if you're further back onto the site and you're stuck, and let's say the T's have taken brackets, you want to work with your pit player the most to make sure you're in a good setup. However, if you've still got brackets control and you're still fighting for brackets, you've got mid control, you're working with your AWper on long. So for rotating to B, obviously, then you're mainly gonna be the guy that is rotating second. So the AWper will go first, and you might be going second. So you have you as the short player have the most options to go down banana if you're retaking B, because you're the closest there and you're not going to waste a lot of time doing so. Okay, then so we come on to the AWper role on Inferno. So your main position is going to be around this long area here. This long area here. You might be going for picks at the beginning of the round, peeking into mid, or you might be peeking apartments, or you're playing on. But the main job of the AWper on CT side Inferno is just to lock down angles, so of where the T's could be. So it might be playing this mid position here. Let's say they take brackets, then you might be playing Moto here, or through the arch, or through library, and you're just locking down positions and staying mobile, staying vigilant, and keeping the T's guessing about where your AWP is. So if you fire a shot library here, you're not going to stay library because now the T's know that you're locked into library. So if you've taken that shot, and let's say there's no one coming out, you might want to try and get toward Moto, maybe peek short. Or you want to just wrap back round to the arch and you want to take up a different position. So now you might play here. The T side role Inferno is about staying, or the CT side AWper on Inferno is about staying versatile and staying on the move. So you never want to be in one position for too long unless you've got like really short info about them being somewhere. So you're also the first rotate toward the B side of the map. And same thing if you start 3B, then you might want to be the guy starting 3B and fall and flashing your guy team down banana if you're not peeking, but you also might want to peek banana. So if you're doing a 3B stack, you basically take the position of the B rotator and you can play in the CT, and you'll get your 2B players to play in sight or play a good sight setup. Again, as your A long or your AWP player, you want to be playing with your guys on A to make sure they're, your short player is in a good setup for what you're holding. So if you don't see him something, you want to always be vocal about what you're holding, where you're playing, and you've got to be listening also to the B comps because you're the first rotate. So if there's something going on B or their B execute, you need to make sure that you're getting your ass over to B, because if you're late to rotate, those few seconds, like the difference from you being like here on the rotate when it's an execute and in arch, could mean the round, because you might be able to get hit. You might be able to get to the B rotate to flash over or flash pull while these T's are coming in and help your B site defenders win the round. So now we're on to the B rotator position. So the B rotator, they're always going to be the first person that's going to rotate off B, and same thing, he might be setting his banana player up for flashes and like peaks. So he might be playing, his common positions are going to be either CT or on the coffin. So if you're a B rotator, you want to learn all this utility here so that you're able to get your other banana player in for these fights, and then if there's no one there, you could be the first person to rotate off. So your B rotator is mainly going to be in CT, maybe ruins, but the best thing you can do is if you're in a man advantage and you know it's going to be B, or if you're in a man advantage, you don't want to get stuck so commonly in CT here, because a lot of lower players, what will happen is they think good B setups are like one person new box and one person CT. Well, what happens is when the T's execute, they smoke off CT, and your position is now completely useless unless you want to run through this. So if you get an inkling that it might be B or you're in a man advantage, you can play more heavy towards site, you're going to want to do it. So you might want to play towards more ruins. You don't have to peek. You might just be sitting, waiting. If the T's then execute, you might throw a smoke forward like this, so you can play around it, you can get more space, and you're playing in a good crossfire setup with your other B player, which we'll get onto in a minute. So you want to be always communicating and talking to your B player about the position you're in, what you expect them to do, and to make sure you're in a good setup. So when they do come into B, you're in the right place at the right time. And obviously, like I said, you're the first A rotate. So if A calls for a rotate, maybe they're doing a full exec, you're going to be that guy that's rotating as quickly as possible. So your job when you're rotating, because the AWP's most likely been moto, or he's gone into sight, or he's dead, you make sure that your gun is out by this point here, because they could be crossing arc. Quickly and confidently taking these angles. You know, if they've called long, you can maybe take a bit more of your time, but you want to be clear, make sure there's no one here. Okay, there's no one here. Then you might want to learn, then you're going to want to know good A retake utility. Okay, so finally on the B site, we've got your B anchor. So this is the guy that's normally going to be playing somewhere on the site. You know, he's going to play dark, new box, first, second orange, something like this. And he's going to be your last call of defense on the B site. So if your B rotator dies, or they exec A, he's going to be the one that you want to last rotate and wait till he sees the bomb to rotate. So he wants to know all good utility that you can throw from back here, the proper way you can smoke banana from here. He's going to want to know good little pop flashes for here. He's going to know all the timing to peak. But again, similarly like the pit player, if they're exec and B, your job isn't just to swing out and see how many kills you get. You want to try and delay the T's from pushing up as much as you can. So it might be you jiggling out here, maybe you get one. You don't want to instantly then swing and peak. You're going to be waiting, you're going to be playing time, you're going to be playing disciplined, you're going to be playing like a rat, and trying to bait out for as long as you can. Again, similarly to the pit player, this might not be a position where you necessarily get, 3-4 Ks every round, but you can have rounds in the game where your team really needs you, and if you pop off and you get a 3K when they're pushing into the side, then you die and you leave your team in like a 3v1 retake, then you've done your job, and that could win the half for your team, maybe even the game, just that one round. So of course, as well as your B anchor, you want to be the guy. You're going to sometimes be the guy that's trying to get the car control. And I know you might say, well, why? Because surely this is going to be a different guy. You're an anchor. You don't want to be aggressive. Well, the reason for this is your rotator is going to be the guy that's on coffin. So if let's say he pops you in flat, if he pops you in car, and you peek this and you clear, and now there's nothing, well, your B guy is going to now be the guy that rotates off, and you're going to hold this position. So you might now be anchoring car. So you might be playing this position here. You might be, waiting on the sandbags, and you're anchoring from car. So a great position as well. So your anchor, for example, is going to play spots like this. Let's say at the beginning of the round you get full banana. Your B rotator might then rotate off, and you're going to be left with a smoke grenade just doing the half wall jump peak like this. Make sure you bound jump to scroll wheel as well, so you can be continuously jumping here and you're not making any sound. So your B anchor is now playing like this. He sees someone, drops the smoke, and you can run back. Maybe you don't want to drop this smoke, you just start running back, drop a smoke like this and run continuously back. Your B anchor is going to be the guy that is always last on the B site. So sometimes if you want to play a bit more aggressively as a B anchor, similarly to the A pit player, sometimes he gets more aggressive in the apartments. Sometimes the B anchor might get more aggressive on car and wants to retake car control. But as the B anchor, you're the guy calling the shots if you want to go for this, these kind of takes. Because if you think car's clear, if you think car's clear because you're not hearing anything, then you're going to go to your B rotator. Can you flash me in banana? Like, I'm going to walk up, flash now. You're going to be all on calling this because you've got the most info about what they're doing on banana, but also what their tendencies are on B. Okay, guys, that's going to be the end of my basic positions guide on the T and CT side of Inferno. This is the first time doing this style of video, so hopefully it was informative and you learned something. So it's going to be great for lower players, these type of videos, because basically learn what good spots are, what spots to play on CT and T side of Inferno, and the basic things you need to look out for in your job.